Peace. Jumbo. Welcome to the VITAL HOOPS Podcast, right here on Black Power Media Reloaded. My name is Fernando Cardenas, aka International XB. I am your host. This is episode number 99, and we have an amazing guest today. Our guest is a social justice activist, a community organizer with over 15 years of experience. She's a movement trainer. She currently works as a senior environmental policy aide, and she is co-pastor of Park Avenue Baptist Church in Grant Park, Atlanta, Georgia. She's also my dear comrade and co-host on the Rise Up International Morning Show right here on Black Power Media Reloaded. Our guest is Reverend Keyanna Jones Moore. Keyanna, welcome to the VITAL HOOPS Podcast. How you doing?
Peace. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here, man. I love VITAL HOOPS.
I had to have you on. This is long overdue, you know what I'm saying? And I appreciate you taking the time. And it's a beautiful thing because you one of the last guests of the first season. We closing out the first season of VITAL HOOPS real soon in a couple episodes.
They call me the closer, so
That's right.
I'm the finisher. I come and I finish it out, you know. This what I do.
Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate you taking the time, Keyanna. First and foremost, I gave a little intro, but if you could kind of tell the people who you are and what it is that you do.
Oh man, that's always the hardest thing, like to tell people what you do. So I'm gonna try to keep it simple. Cool. My name is Keyanna Michelle Jones Moore, and I'm a native of East Atlanta, Georgia. I currently live in Decatur, where it's greater, and I am a senior environmental policy aide for one of the local commissioners at a municipal government here in Georgia. Working for the cause of environmental justice really is more expansive than people would think, because what I do in my work is I center intersectionality, and I make sure to connect the dots between environmental racism, racial and social justice, economic justice, reproductive justice, childcare justice, all the things. I bring it back around to show how one thing is not standing alone. Like there's no way to organize in a silo, particularly when you are organizing around environmental justice. So as an environmental policy aide, I advise my boss on policy. I also do a lot of community education. Community education is a large part of my work, helping people to understand what environmental racism is, how it affects us, and how it affects everyone, not just Black people or other so-called marginalized people who are marginalized because of what we know as race, but how environmental racism is actually a detriment to the economy of any locale. So that is the bulk of the work that I do around environmental racism. But of course, that often takes me into the work of anti-militarism and helping people to understand how militarism is one of the greatest threats to the environment today.
Yeah, probably the number one. If we're honest, war and militarism, without a doubt.
That is my position, it is the number one. People do have some valid positions about other things, but
either way, if it's not number one, it's two or three. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
We still have to take care of it.
I mean, I'm always able to bring it back around and show my point that this is like the greatest threat right now, because look at what's happening around the world. Militarism is destroying ecosystems and environments everywhere. So Ecocide is a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate you. I appreciate that intro. Our listeners and people watching already know who you are, but it's still always important to, let everybody know what time it is. So I want to kind of focus this conversation on that environmental racism, because I think it's something that's very important, and that, our people suffer from this tremendously. And a lot of time they don't even know what it is, or they don't know how to articulate it. At our Afro Vegan Fest here in France, the Bese Saka, we kind of had a panel in which we kind of expanded on this topic. But for those who may not know, could you please explain what environmental racism is and how it affects our communities?
Absolutely. Environmental racism is simply the systematic oppression of marginalized people, Black people, and non-white people using the environment. And it shows up through the destruction of the environment, the alteration of the environment to create and exacerbate adverse circumstances in the community. And those things usually cause health problems, health problems that a lot of us deal with. A lot of people will say, oh my gosh, I think almost everybody I know who has asthma is a Black person. And then you have to think about, where do they live? Where did they grow up? Where do they work? What type of environment are they in for the most part? When we think about things like lead exposure, it came to prominence at a certain time here in the United States because of old paint in houses and other buildings. But most people are exposed to lead through the soil and the water. Water became a big thing with the Flint, Michigan expose, right? Now, at the time that the expose happened in Flint, Michigan, I was living in New Jersey. And what we found in New Jersey is that we had 12 municipalities in New Jersey that had lead levels higher than Flint, Michigan. And they were all predominantly Black communities.
Wow. Yeah.
But the other place that people miss the exposure of lead, and I think it's the most neglected, is lead in soil. And I know people are probably thinking, like, come on, man, it's common sense. Water has to run off somewhere and it has to go into the soil. But everybody's not thinking like that, because most of us live in places where we have wastewater treatments. So people are thinking, the water is going to the wastewater treatment facility. We have this whole sanitary sewer system where the water is supposed to run into, and it goes to the wastewater treatment system to get treated. But much of that water still goes into the soil. And what people also forget is that the simple process of evaporation, when rain happens and other types of precipitation, remember that precipitation is coming through the atmosphere. And if you live in a place affected by environmental racism, then there are free radicals and other particulate matter within the atmosphere that the precipitation even passes through. So when you think about the fact that precipitation is what lands on the ground in your yard, the soil right there, those things are going to have lead, and they will affect your soil quality greatly. So if you're a person who's like, you know what, I love nature, I love growing stuff, I want my plants, I want, my little garden, all those things, you do have to be concerned about lead in your soil. And those are the most common ways that people are affected by that one thing. But the other thing that happens with environmental racism, particularly when gentrification begins to happen, is that construction adds to a lot of pollution. Like, construction is the number one source of pollution in urban areas. So when you think about, oh, there's a brand new supermarket going up and they're doing something good for us, pros and cons, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's going to be good eventually. I hope that they don't kill you with the prices, and I hope that there's quality food there. But also think about what's happening in the construction phase, because when there's blasting, and I know here in Georgia particularly, granite rock causes a particular type of particulate matter exposure, and a lot of that happens when they're blasting, because granite is prevalent and rich here in Georgia. So we think about that. It's actually radon gas that we're being exposed to when granite is blasted, and radon gas exposure causes a lot of adverse health effects.
Yeah, absolutely. That what you're saying there is key. I was reading up on something that was talking about the importance of rewilding land, what I mean? And so that's another one that when it comes to also pollution and all of that, just the animal industry, you know what I mean, and taking up land, and the necessity of rewilding land.
Yes.
Anytime, and it's not just in the United States, it happens even on the continent and everywhere else. Anytime people start building, we think it's something positive, right? Oh, we're new infrastructure, this and that. But the importance of us being connected to nature, you know what I'm saying? As far as, first of all, yeah, the pollution aspect of it, but then also just us just being connected to nature and all of that is something that
Yeah.
sometimes just goes over our head.
That makes me think about urban areas, right? And the first thing that I just want to remind people, and this might be completely asinine, but I just feel the need to do it.
Mm,
Urban is not synonymous with Black. And I want people to understand that urban means metropolitan. An urban area is a metropolitan area. Urban areas are mostly populated by Black people, or at least heretofore were mostly populated by Black people, because of the fact that white flight took place White people didn't want to be in urban areas when Black people could afford to live there. So urban areas then became more neglected because of the prevalence of Black people, and urban areas began to look more run down. Like, nobody was worried about making sure that there was an adequate green space where people could go out and commune with nature. Nobody was trying to build a dog park in Atlanta, especially in East Atlanta, where I grew up and lived for so many years before now. Now East Atlanta is heavily gentrified, and this is an urban area, right? So I want people to understand that urban and Black are not synonymous. But the fact that urban areas historically have been mostly populated by Black people and other non-white people, they have been continually neglected. And there was a deliberate disinvestment in urban areas. So even when you think about the highway, think about a highway system where most Black people live. I know here in Atlanta, the highway system is what really destroyed most of the wealthiest part of Atlanta, which was downtown Atlanta. And when I say wealthiest part, I'm talking about Black wealth, Black people thriving and having businesses and living what we would call a good life was destroyed by highway construction. Highway construction, railroad construction. There was a marked effort to dissect and bisect the Black community so that we would no longer be connected and continue to grow and thrive the way we were. But all of that's environmental racism, because when you decide that you're going to, first of all, build a highway, think about how it is that asphalt is mixed up and made, and you got to pour that. And what's going into the air, when you smell, you see paved asphalt, that's tar. There's so much stuff. There was a big push at one point to raise awareness about tar in cigarettes, and for cigarettes not to have so much of it. So if you think about the fact that the Surgeon General's office at one point was saying that this thing is so dangerous, why would we continue to use this in the paving of streets, in the creation of highways and other byways? But once that highway is built, now you've got 3 levels of pollution at least, because you've got the noise pollution. You're going to have light pollution, because depending on how close you are, the lights from the vehicles are going to be shining into your homes, all around your schools and whatever. But then you've got, of course, everything else that goes into the air from those cars. So that is what environmental racism looks like. And that is why when you see things, I remember when gentrification really began in East Atlanta particularly, and now the white people call it East Atlanta Village. But I remember some of my family members saying, oh my goodness, I want them to just keep coming because they're building up so much. Do you see how it looks now? It's so nice. And it might look nice, but how's your blood work? It might look nice, but how are you breathing these days? It might look nice, but have you noticed anything different about your skin lately? Because all of this construction is adding things into the atmosphere that we are breathing in. It's going into the water. So now we're drinking it in, we're imbibing it, and then we're also eating it because it's going into the soil. And so many times it's not mitigated in the soil. I remember one location, not far from where we live, and it's a neighborhood called Vine City. It's well known in Atlanta, number one, because Arthur Blank done totally gentrified that area all by himself. But 2, because of the level of environmental racism that persists in that area, because the Atlanta University Center, that whole complex over there with Clark Atlanta, Spelman, Morehouse, it's all in that area. And it still experiences widespread flooding really, really badly over there. But I remember that there were people from the EPA who were out in Vine City a few years ago, and they were trying to have meetings to raise awareness about lead in the soil, and they had a mitigation program. What struck me about what was going on was that, one, I happened upon a meeting because I stopped into a local church to do a survey for my job, and the meeting was going on. So I called my husband, he came over, but with my husband and myself included, there were only about 8 people in that meeting, and the 2 of them were from the EPA. So think about how many people from that neighborhood were actually aware of what was going on. And they continued to have meetings, and my husband and I got so many emails, and we went to different webinars about it, and still we never really saw a lot of people from the community. The council member that represents that area is a Black man in the city of Atlanta. and he was not doing any proactive outreach to inform the community of what was going on, to tell them about the mitigation program, to say, hey, if somebody knocks on your door and says they're from the EPA, they should have a badge that looks like this and they're legitimate. Because you know how a lot of people are skeptical when you're knocking on their door,
right.
or just calling them out of the blue saying, hey, I'm with the EPA. And you're like, what? Why? I don't think so. But this council member, who is supposed to be a representative of those people, could have done a lot more work to inform them about the fact that this is happening in your community and this is something that we've been affected by and this is how we'll mitigate it. Let me help you. He didn't do that. And this is how environmental racism just goes on for, time immemorial. And we let it go because so many people are just not aware. And when they do come into the knowledge of something, it's usually once things have already gotten to a point where it's so bad that there's been a breaking news story because somebody's passed away or in a hospital or otherwise hurt because of it. And then we care. But it's such a reactionary position to be in, where we don't get a chance to, in the beginning phases, try to stamp out environmental racism as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Nah, this is why I commend your work, because this is so important, and the pollution, a lot of times, like you said, we don't understand how deep it is and how much it affects us. But no matter what it is, it always affects our people first when it comes to pollution and the destruction of the ecosystem. It always goes to us, whether it's our neighborhoods in the quote unquote developed world or whatever, the US, Europe. And then it's also, in South America, in the motherland, everywhere. You know what I'm saying? It's our people being affected by it. To get back to what you were saying, like when it comes to the soil, and the lead in the soil and the soil being deprived from nutrients and all of that. I also read an article that was talking about how when you eat an apple, in order to get the same nutrients you got, I think it was 30 or 40 years ago, you have to eat 6 apples today.
Yes. Most of those apples are being grown in the lab. Most of those aren't even coming off of a tree.
Right.
If we're going to be honest about it, there's so much to be said about genetically modified organisms. So many things to be said about the fact that Monsanto owns most of the seeds for the food that we eat. And I want people to understand the significance of that, because if you're not taking the seeds from your apple, even if you take the seeds from the apple that you're eating, right, and you plant those, first of all, I am wondering who recently has eaten an apple with actual seeds in it, because I get down to the core of the apples that I have here, and I'm not seeing seeds. There's definitely a core, but I'm not seeing seeds. And that's something that we need to be concerned about, right?
Absolutely.
Am I going to stop eating apples altogether? No, I'm not, because I want the nutrients from apples. But I also have to understand in that I'm getting a lot of what's not necessarily good for me either. The fact that we now have to make sure that we take some extra steps to do extra washing of our fruit because of what's being put on the outside to preserve them, the wax that's there. That's not something that we need to eat.
Right.
But the real problem is that the Food and Drug Administration thinks that there are acceptable levels of poison that we can eat and be okay. That in and of itself is a problem. But the fact that so many people just don't have the knowledge to understand that, it's great that you're eating an apple, but you need to wash it a little bit extra. This is what you need to wash it with. This is how we got to get this wax off of here. Even your broccoli is not the same as what it used to be. Your broccoli right now looks like something that your child colored with a crayon. That's not what broccoli is supposed to look like, right? But do we stop eating broccoli altogether? We don't. We take the extra steps to clean it in as much as we can so that we can get those nutrients. But the fact that we have to eat way more apples than we would have had to eat 45 years ago is an issue. And when we think about growing things ourselves, one, let it be known that it was during the Obama administration that Monsanto and a couple of other companies were able to get the rights to almost every seed known to man, right? That was something that this Black man did. That was one thing among a bunch of others that was shady as hell, that was backhanded, that people will deny if you tell them, but it's the truth. Absolutely. It's Obama who made it, that we are in the situation that we are in, with the ability or inability to grow our own food successfully in clean soil, right? Now, when you think about something like lead in soil and the fact that nobody's really trying to help you get it out, if you can't wait for the EPA to come around, in a lot of places where people live, there are local universities and environmental organizations that will help you do some soil testing. If you can get your soil tested, get your soil tested. And if you are found to have bad levels of lead in your soil, then get wildflowers and sunflowers. Wildflowers and sunflowers are excellent at mitigating the levels of lead in soil and make it much healthier for you to grow things. When I think about where I live and pollution, I live in a place where they have built what is right now the largest militarized police training facility in the United States, Cop City, the original Cop City, right? This is the first one. And it's crazy that Cop City is built, right? And Andre Dickens, the Black mayor of Atlanta, has been touting how much greater the city is because of Cop City. But a report just came out the other day saying how Atlanta is still one of the unsafest places in the United States. And I love it. I love it. I love the fact
you can't make it up.
Exactly, that we have this glaring contradiction, because it's like, bro, we told y'all that Cop City was not going to make this place safer. What we told you what happened is that you were actually going to destroy further this Black neighborhood in Metro Atlanta, in Atlanta proper, in the urban area.
More police has never meant us being more safe
ever. So you took away the trees, you added the police. But what's happening now in that area? There is a significant lack of tree canopy, which has created an urban heat island effect in that area. And what does that mean for us? When there is an urban heat island, that means that you have to take so much more energy to be used to cool an area. And what does energy usage mean? Energy usage means that you are still heating the area even more, because if you consider the fact that 381 acres of trees were torn down in this urban area, people in that area now have to use extra electricity to cool their homes. The more that you use your cooling unit to cool your home, the hotter you're making the atmosphere. So there's this residual heat island effect. And a lot of people will call it heat dome, but heat dome, heat island, same thing. There is the effect that's happening there, and it's causing increased energy usage by people in that community. But also that means increased energy usage for the rest of us, because in that area in particular, it's a very weak power grid already. Southern Company, which is the parent company of Georgia Power, which runs the electricity here, they've enjoyed record profits in the billions, like billions of profits in 2025. But because of the fact that they have a nasty habit of overcharging Black people for electricity, people are paying even more. Now, they've increased people's power bills like 6 times in the last 3 years, and the Public Service Commission here has approved that. But the fact that there is a study, Sierra Club Georgia chapter published a study on energy burden. And energy burden is a real thing. So that community is very heavily energy burdened. Number one, because they live near a highway. Like that neighborhood, that community is positioned in between 2 highways, I-20 and I-285. Now we have the urban heat island effect because of Cop City being built. And also with that, there is a wastewater treatment facility that's closed. However, what we've been finding with the wastewater treatment facilities is that so many companies are not alerting the wastewater treatment facilities when there are forever chemicals in the water. So those forever chemicals are still coming back into the watershed that's right there, which of course is going into the soil along with lead and other things. So you got a whole mishmash of just an unhealthy situation that's going on. And that's just one neighborhood. That's one community. That's where Cop City was built. But when Cop City was under construction, the things that the neighbors were dealing with from the construction, not only do you have the radon gas that was in the air, not only, do you have just dirt, right, from them blasting and from the construction that was happening. And then there's a level of paving that's had to go on over there as well. This community in particular will feel these effects for generations to come, because you have to remember what it means when you cut down trees, how long it takes certain trees to grow. These people cut down native species trees and wanted to plant Japanese maples to beautify the place. Like, I don't even understand where it is that they get these ideas, but then I do understand where they get certain ideas, and it's because they're not concerned about the community, because their immediate assumption is that these Black people don't know what's going on. They don't understand what's happening to them, so we can just do it. But when you think about urban heat islands, like, this is a real crisis in Metro Atlanta in particular. Climate Reality and a couple of other organizations came together some months ago to talk about what it is that we're living with the urban heat island effect, and that it has proliferated around Metro Atlanta and so many other urban areas. People are like, you know what? Global warming, it's been happening for a while, and climate change is inevitable. But you know what? It doesn't have to be. Not like this. If we were not burning so much fossil fuels, if we were not so heavily reliant on coal, and not far from here in Alabama, there's a nuclear power plant, Plant Vogtle, which is the most expensive power plant in the world. Most expensive nuclear power plant in the world. People like me are paying for that still. We didn't ask for that to be built, but Southern Company got to build it, and now they're charging their customers for it, and they're also going to charge us more because now we got to pay for damage to their infrastructure from Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene probably would not have happened if global warming and climate change were not what they are right now. And when I think about a company like Southern Company, and I'm going to keep leaning on them because they provide energy here. And in other areas, companies like Southern Companies are the very companies that are enticing data center developers to come and to create even worse environmental racist conditions where people live. But they're going to give so many discounts on billing to those data centers, and that cost from the data centers gets pushed back onto us, the rate-paying customers. So when you think about what environmental racism means, you can't separate this from economic justice, because now you're beginning to talk about how it is that people live and how they make their money and how they have to expend their money for the cause of their own oppression, right? I'm paying for my own oppression right now because I am paying a high electric bill because a data center is paying a much cheaper electric bill. And not to mention, when it comes to the data centers, the enormous amount of electricity that they require, but the catastrophic amount of water they require. Like, it is catastrophic, the amount of water that is being used by data centers right now. And in the state of Georgia, if data centers continue to proliferate the way they have, we'll have a crisis of water availability by 2028. That's 2 years away. Like, that's a very real thing. And people need to think about that. People want to use Chat GPT so bad. And the thing is stupid. I think the best way I've heard it described by one activist is that, like, this is mid AI. This isn't even the good stuff. They're not even giving you some quality information. First of all, no AI is ever as smart as a person, because AI can only spit out what you put in. So Chat GPT, the one that's most popular, spits out a bunch of misinformation because a bunch of ignorant ass people go and put stuff in that's not true, and then it spits it back out to other people. But I think what people might not really understand about AI, whether it's Chat GPT or anything else, once you give that thing permission to use your intellectual property, everything you ever say to it is theirs. They own it. It's not private. So anybody else can find what you put into and got out of Chat GPT.
That's right.
It is that. I know that this is the goal of society, because, Rockefeller said it. We don't want a nation of thinking people. Like, we want a nation of workers. We want good workers. We want everybody to be sheep. We want people to follow the same rubric, the same plan, the same path, do the same things. And this is what AI, the use of AI, is really pushing us toward. But when you think about that, like, this is what data centers are being propped up for, right? People are saying, well, we need data centers, for AI. Do you really need data centers for AI? Because do you really even need the AI? Right. Like, let's be for real. This thing, I think, is so much of a bubble that is probably going to pop at some point, because I don't know that anybody has ever been able just to tell us definitively what is the lifespan of your average data center that's being built right now. How long is this thing even going to be in existence? Yeah. How long? And then when it's gone, what are we left with? We are left with a bunch of impervious surface that we can't use for anything that's nurturing for people. We are left with a bunch of impervious surface that won't even be suitable for you to switch into housing because of everything that's gone on there. People can't be exposed to the pollution that's there, because even one of the things that people like to talk about with data centers, when they say, oh, there's a way for us to mitigate so much water usage. We can use a closed loop system where the same water is just recycled over and over. You sound stupid, because first of all, water will always evaporate. I don't care how much you're recycling. But secondly, you have to use chemicals to keep that water cool. You're about to use antifreeze and all types of stuff to keep this cool. That's going right back into the water. And even if you're keeping it right there on that site, it's still going somewhere, and people are going to be affected by that. Like, I don't know how dumb people think we are, but the things they try to pull over on us to detract from the fact that it is environmental racism. Because I don't care where you go, data centers are not in white affluent areas. Data centers are always in rural areas or majority Black areas. And in many times the rural area is the majority Black area. So when you think about this, poor people, Black people, you have to remember that this is always class warfare. Period. Point blank. It's always class warfare. They're always going to where they don't believe that the people have the power to resist, because they don't believe that the people have the education or the money to be able to resist. And when we think about this, if enough of us continue to stand up the way I've been seeing so many communities doing lately, we really can stop these data centers, and we can force the hands of those of our elected officials who don't want to agree with the people and believe that data centers carry some benefit. I know I went down the rabbit hole on that one.
No.
The data
that's perfect. This vicious white hegemonic capitalist system will not stop. They're going to keep going and going and going. So it's up to us, the people, to stand up. And I think the mainstream media has done a great job downplaying this for years, and this is why the people don't understand how urgent it is for us to act as far as the environment and how serious the ecocide is.
Yes.
They've been downplaying it, but if you truly look at, scientists have been talking about this for years now, really.
Yes.
If you truly look back, it's been over 50 years. They've been like, yo, listen, we have to do something about the planet. It's not good.
Absolutely.
But politicians been downplaying it because they're making money.
Yeah. I think that particularly here in the United States, we do a really great job with the white Christian nationalist agenda, helping people to ignore things, because they will make you hate Palestinians and love the country of Israel so much that you totally ignore the fact that this genocide is also ecocide.
Absolutely.
That what is happening in Palestine is that the land is being destroyed, so that olive trees that natively grow there won't be able to grow there for a very long time. If the Palestinian people are to begin to rebuild, they won't have any of the environmental infrastructure that they had. And that is what genocide looks like. That is how you really destroy the people, right? And when we think about this, you're taking away their shelter. You're destroying the environment by blasting and demolishing their homes. That's one level of pollution. Then you're making it so that the soil is not even good to grow anything. You're limiting and restricting the flow of water. To me, that sounds like Cop City. You took away the land. You cut down the trees. You made it so that trees are not going to grow there. You're going to plant some little rinky-dink saplings, around to make it look nice. But in that community, what is going to happen once Cop City is no longer being used? Because I'm telling you right now, the city of Atlanta is notorious for dogging out their property, not taking care of it. I mean, that very same property used to be a police training facility before. Right. I just don't get it. Like, you did not take care of it before. Now you got something that's even bigger that eventually is going to be defunct at some point, because politicians love to waste and spend money. But you destroyed 381 acres of the largest urban forest in the southeastern United States. And I want people to think about that. The largest urban forest in the southeastern United States is now destroyed in favor of a militarized training facility. But this is the same thing that's happening not only in Palestine. This is what's happening in Congo. This is what's happening in Sudan. The land is being destroyed. The entire ecosystem is being just obliterated in favor of white hegemony. So when you think about this, you cannot separate the environmental cost, the ecological cost, and the human cost. Of course, we are, our greatest asset. We are the greatest product of our environments. People cannot survive if there is not a viable and livable environment. And that is the goal of the destruction of the land in Palestine, in Sudan, in Congo, now in Nigeria. Like, I'm not even understanding how in the world, people really just bought, oh my gosh, they're persecuting Christians in Nigeria. We got to bomb them. Let's destroy the land because they're persecuting people. Yeah. Like, really, first of all, Trump, you don't care. Secondly, we already know the setup. We already know that this is the perfect segue into, all right, let's expand AFRICOM, because now we need a base. We need a United States military base in Nigeria now, because we got to keep these people under control. Like, really?
But that's the mental side. That's the mental side. See, they keep hitting us with the same okie doke, and we keep falling for it as a people, It's what you're saying. It's the genocide, the ecocide, and the mental side.
Yes, it is.
That's why we are, this is serious.
It is. I tell people all the time that as much as we as organizers always talk about the reason why we do our work, so many of us will remind people like, look, I'm doing this work to change the material conditions in which my people live. Like, we want things to be better. Well, the environment is the greatest material condition in which we live. And we can't do any real effective organizing if we are not educating people about environmental racism, if we are not calling it out when we see it, if we're not empowering people to stand up against it and helping people to understand how it is that they can form their own resilient communities. Yes. So that they can combat environmental racism, then we're not doing the real work. We can't do this work and leave environmental racism out of the conversation.
That's right. It's always going to come back to the environment. Even myself, my work as a health coach, your health, it always has to come back to the environment, your environment. You know what I'm saying? What are you breathing? What are you drinking? What what's around you, So, the planet, that's our home, and it's the planet, and there's nowhere to escape.
That's right. We only have one.
It's a fishbowl. You know what I mean?
We only got one.
It is what it is. And the oppression is global. The ecocide is global as well.
Yes.
So that's where we at. Man, thank you, Keyanna. This has been great. I got a couple more questions before I let you go.
Ooh.
I want to ask you about all of this that you do, and it's a lot of work. I applaud you for it. I know that you're a mother, so I want to ask you about that, as a mother, how are you able to, balance out all of that, working, all the organizing, and also, in some aspects taking care of your health, and being a mother. Talk to me a little bit about that, because
being a mother is like the greatest adventure in life, right? You're never going to get on a roller coaster ride that is like this one. And I'll say that of everything that I've done in life, this is probably the thing that I am proudest of, is having the children that I have. My children are amazing. what I see mostly in my work, because before coming into like environmental justice work specifically, for many years in New Jersey, I was, I mean, I've been an organizer and activist for a long time. So I started out my like trajectory of advocacy in education advocacy, right? So my children were always with me, and what I saw was that my balance at that time, I used to just say, you know what, I got so much stuff to do. I'm going to take my children with me. And I had to learn that this is not quality time, although, you know, it taught them what I do and the reason for doing it. That was a good thing. But I learned that I could not substitute that for just time with them. So I have to be intentional about taking time with them. My 18-year-old is the one that will remind me all the time of when she feels like I'm doing too much out there and not enough at home. And what really struck me was, I think it was 2021. Yeah. We were down here in Georgia fighting against a really, really bad voter suppression bill. And I was protesting. It was like 30 days straight. We were protesting at the state capitol. And I homeschool my children, for people who don't know. And I was homeschooling at the time. And I remember the homeschool day being done. And I'm going to go out to this protest. And my daughter's like, well, where are you going? And I'm like, to a protest. She's like, really? Again? And I'm like, yes, this is important. We have to do this. I got to do this. And she just looked at me and she was like, really? Like, you know what, mommy? You're going to save the whole world and forget about your own children. And knocked the wind out of me, right? Knocked the wind out of me. And that was when I had to think more about how it is that I incorporate this, right? Because yeah, it's the lifestyle. But one of the things that I'm always cognizant of is that I don't want my revolutionary lifestyle, if I can even truly be called a revolutionary, I don't want this lifestyle to be a thing that my children look back on over the years and say, oh my God, that jacked us up.
As a negative, right.
You know, I don't want them to look back on that and say, oh my goodness, this work took my mother away and I don't even know who she is. You know, I'm learning who she is through other people. So it made me sit down for a second and think about, how do I do this work? Because the reality of it is that there's no world in which I don't do this work. So how do I do this work and make sure that my children, one, are a part of it in a way that feels good for them, where they have some agency, but also help them to understand that this work is never more important than they are. So being able to balance, for me, pretty much try to live my life by a schedule. Calendars are very important for my husband and myself, because my husband is a part of this work too. And my husband, we both work outside of our home, but I homeschool. And, you know, my husband and I don't want this to be one of those things where it's like, you know what, we got to check in just to give each other a kiss. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we are scheduling the things that are important, the things that we want our children to be a part of with us, that they understand why we want them to be a part of this, what this means, how it affects them, and how it is that it will then affect the people they know. You know, the 18-year-old is very much involved in what it means to be civically engaged now. And when I do my work, she's saying, okay, mommy, you just did this presentation about, I don't know, the Public Service Commission and these data centers. How do I translate this to my friends? You know, how do I get people my age to understand? Because they're just like, whatever, they don't care, you know. So the balance it's actually come better these days than it did years ago. And because of the fact that I have my husband who helps me now, my husband helps a lot. So my husband definitely takes up a lot of the slack. We make sure that we have the house covered, you know, between the two of us. But being a mother and doing this work, I think that this work is one of the most important things that I could hand down to my children, that they understand what it means to resist, that resistance is always justified, period. Like there is no condition on resistance, that resistance is essential, because the world that we live in was never, ever thought of with them in mind.
That's right.
And the greatest thing that I could ever teach my children is to forget about that bullshit about if they don't make room for you at the table, bring your own chair. Fuck that. Turn the table over, because that shit is yours. The table is yours. The room is yours. The building is yours. Your ancestors have worked for that. And you carry the spirit of your ancestors. So you go and take what it is that is rightfully yours. And if it's a seat at that table, take the whole table.
No doubt. 100%. Yo, I appreciate that. Listen, that's what you're saying is real. That's a serious conversation. You know, I've had some similar with my children as well, where at some point they were like, yo, this is all you do is this, work. And, I think to me, it's about making it even more holistic, meaning that like for me, raising my children is a part of it too. It's a part of the work
Yes.
too, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Giving them the love, the information, all of it, the
Yes.
education. And it starts with oneself, first of all, because we have to maintain our mental health as well. So it starts
Yes.
with oneself, being centered, etc. It has to extend to our close families, our
Yeah.
children, our wives and husbands, our brothers and sisters, parents if they're around, all the way to our communities.
Yeah.
And then, globally, because we know that the work is global. But yeah, definitely it's challenging. That's why. But yeah, I appreciate you so much for the work that you do. I want to ask you this question. I feel like our ancestors laid the path to a lot of things, and one of our main problems is we don't know our radical history, in general as a people. But there's some mistakes that they made as well. There's some things
Yeah.
that we need to do differently. Some things we need to do better. I think one of the things that we need to do better is put our women in front of the struggle. You know what I'm saying? Black women, African women that have always carried the struggles. But unfortunately, a lot of the times we hear men names. You know what I mean? As an African revolutionary woman, what do you think are some of the things that need to be done for that, especially coming from us? What are the things that we men need to do better?
So I'm going to say that the education piece is really important. And this comes with healing within the community between Black men and Black women. The same way that the news cycle does a good job of running the same lies to make people be okay with things like genocide, our social media, some of those people who have come to prominence within the Black community, particularly some Black men, have done a really good job of making Black women the enemy of Black men. And they continue to repeat the same misogynistic rhetoric.
Mm.
And part of it comes from Christianity, honestly.
Mm.
Some of it comes from Christianity and other religions, right? All of the
Yeah.
Abrahamic religions, I will
Yep.
say. If
Yep.
you
You're right.
participate in any of the Abrahamic religions, then women are oppressed. And that was one of the biggest parts of my own decolonization. And I'm still in the process of decolonizing around Christianity, right? How it is that women are oppressed within this book or these books, whether it's the Bible, the Torah, whatever, how women are made to feel subservient, ignorant, honestly. In a lot of cases, women are abused within these texts, and you can see it. And a lot of us grew up with this. So it's really deeply embedded. And we have to, one, be willing to unlearn some of the things that we've learned. Simple things like, well, God is the head and then the man, and then, the woman follows the man. It's like, do I really have to follow a man? How come we can't walk together side by side?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't need a person to lead me.
Right.
And I look at it the same way in my position as a pastor at Park Avenue Baptist Church. A lot of people say, all right, Pastor, you got to lead me. And I'm like, no, I can't lead you anywhere, but I'm here to walk with you. Like, we're going to go on this journey together. So I think that education about how it is that we've been deceived about the role of women is one of the first steps. The second thing is helping us to understand that we are not enemies, that we go together. Like, we perfectly go together. That's why there's two of us, right? And a part of that really has to be educating Black men in particular about sexuality that is not heterosexual, not being a detriment to them. Helping Black men not to be afraid of people who choose to be transgender, because there's been so much rhetoric, and again, they've done a good job. Society has done a good job of beating Black men down and taking so much from Black men, to the point where Black men are just on alert and on guard. Anybody who does not look like them is like, what do you want? What are you going to take from me this time? Because of the fact, like, we cannot negate the fact that particularly in the United States, everybody gets special consideration except Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And then Black men in particular, right? But then on some fronts, Black women.
Black women as well. Yeah.
But getting us out of that, like perpetual defensive mode, that's going to have to happen. And we're going to have to understand that a person having agency over their body completely is not a threat to us, like particularly Black men. Another man deciding that he wants to wear women's clothes has zero to do with you. Let him be free. I want you to be free like that. So that if you say, oh my goodness, that jacket looks nice. Oh, but that's a woman's jacket. Who cares?
If you want to wear it,
like, right? These clothing designations were made by the person who designed it because they designed it with somebody in mind. But if it fits you,
absolutely,
go ahead and rock out with your cock out, bro. Mm-hmm. So I think that definitely Black men understanding that Black women are not your enemy. The mm-hmm. fact that Black women choose to be as highly educated as we are is not a threat to you. The fact that Black women have found it within themselves to survive and thrive being single doesn't mean that they hate you. It mm-hmm. just means that what they want from you is to understand them more, but also getting back to our true African roots. If we really get back to our African roots, then there's a different level of respect for the Black woman. Yeah, if we get back to real African spirituality, mm-hmm. then we understand. And, this was illuminated in such a great way for me last year at our Alliance of Baptists annual convening by Dr. Wil Gafney. The title of the entire convening was I Met God and She's a Black Woman. Mm-hmm. And we talked a lot about the Black Madonna, but we also talked about Black women in history, in religion, even Christianity, but how it is that Black women have really carried so much and deserve recognition for that, and how Black men can learn to, that it's not an affront to you to uplift a Black woman. It's not an affront to you to even listen to a Black woman. And if you think about the word follow, it's not a bad thing for you to follow a Black woman because you were birthed by a Black woman. And I know that a lot of men carry trauma from the Black women who raised them. And it's not that, all Black mothers were here to hurt our children. It's just that we were raised with some toxic shit that we, inadvertently passed on because we didn't have the knowledge that we have now. We didn't have the wherewithal to say, you know what, this was done to me. And yeah, I turned out okay, but this may not be okay for my child. Let me look at another way to raise him. There is just a lot of undoing, healing that's going to come in the form of education, healing in the form of therapy, and healing in the form of spending time together and understanding how great we both are, how awesome Black women and Black men are, how awesome we are individually, because in my mind, there's no greater creature on this planet than a Black man, Right. Like there's just nothing can give me the feeling that I have, from a Black man. When I see a Black man succeed, when I see a Black man doing great things, and when I see a Black man loving a Black woman and taking care of his family. And then when I see Black men together, that type of camaraderie, the bond, just, the seamless way Black men fit together when they're doing things. There's nothing greater than that in the world for me. And when I think about it, if we could really harness that spirit, but do it together so that we're not in competition with each other, understanding that women didn't come to take anything away from you. The fact that so many women have stepped up into what some men believe are the positions of a man is because they've honestly had to. Because, y'all too busy over there licking your wounds and, these Black women took this and, they do everything for the Black woman and, it's Black girl magic and whatever. We got to let that go. I think that, in order for Black men to truly respect Black women the way that they should, they're going to just have to understand the true value of a Black woman. And all that starts with healing in our communities through education, through therapy, through spending time together, and through understanding like the real work of women throughout history.
No doubt. That's beautiful. Yeah, I think you're right. I think, a lot of that talk is far right-wing rhetoric. It's fascist rhetoric. That's what fascism is about. It's about us being like targeting other small oppressed communities. Like, oh, it's the LGBTQ fault if we're oppressed. oh, it's the gays, oh, it's the women, the black women are taking over. And we're never looking at the real oppressor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree with you
Absolutely.
100%. Listen, I appreciate you so much, Keyanna. I got one last thing. This is what we do here at the VITAL HOOPS Podcast. Book recommendation. I need you to recommend
Ooh.
a book or one or two books, that you think are great for our audience to check out.
Yeah, so I'm gonna recommend Revolutionary Love by Dr. Joy James. Cannot go without a recommendation by Dr. Joy James because
yes. You know what?
She is.
Yeah, we need that. We need that. It hasn't been recommended yet, so I appreciate you for that.
Look at me. Revolutionary Love by Dr. Joy James. Also, I'm going to recommend Anything by Dr. Wil Gafney. And she spells her first name W-I-L, only one L, but Gafney, G-A-F-N-E-Y. She's done some midras for Black women, and these are some things that are rooted in theology, but these things are essential, honestly, essential understanding for us. And I have just now started this book, but I do recommend Black Liturgies by Cole Arthur Riley. And oh wait, there is actually one more. It has to do with womanist organizing, womanist theology in organizing, and I feel like it's All the Black Girls Are Activists is the name of it.
Okay.
Yeah, All the Black Girls Are Activists.
I'll put that down in the description. Yep.
Yeah, definitely would recommend those books. I mean, there's actually one more.
Go ahead.
One more. Jesus is an Anarchist, because a lot of people like to talk about Christianity within their movement work, and I think that if we do this, then if we read this book, it gives a bit more understanding of what it is that people mean when they say Jesus is an anarchist. For those people who want to talk about Jesus, got it right here. Terry Stokes.
Okay.
Terry Stokes. Definitely got to recommend that one, because for the people who love to invoke the name of Jesus when they are doing crappy things, I think that's a great book that people would like to read, and also to help people get familiar and comfortable just saying the word anarchist and anarchism, because it's not the chaos that right-wing Christian nationalists want it to seem like.
Absolutely.
It's not.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my recs.
Appreciate that, Keyanna. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for blessing the VITAL HOOPS Podcast.
Thank you. Listen, I appreciate you.
I hope people continue to follow everything that you're doing. I thank you personally for all the work that you do for our people. And definitely we stay connected through Black Power Media.
Yes, absolutely. Look, people got to check us out. We about to be back in full effect.
That's right. We back.
About to be back in full effect. 2026. We rolling in.
We here.
Yes.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
All right. This is it. Episode 99 in the books. We give thanks to Reverend Keyanna Jones Moore. Make sure you follow her on IG and check out the work she got going on. There's some links down below. Also, check out the reading list she provided. Important work right there. And listen, environmental racism is real. You know what I mean? And something that we all need to be concerned with, because it's affecting our people globally. No matter where we are on this planet, it's affecting us. The Ecocide is real, and this system will not stop. So please make sure you join a revolutionary organization, and make sure you like this video and share it with your peoples. Please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate the support. This is the VITAL HOOPS Podcast, for the people, by the people, for the culture. Uhuru.